My manager threw scalding coffee at my face in front of 89 coworkers and screamed I ruined. Hours later, HR stormed her office after realizing the entire meeting was secretly being recorded. The coffee hit my face before I even registered she'd thrown it. Boiling liquid. Shock. Silence. 80-something people in the conference room froze as steam rose off my blouse. The scalding pain came a few seconds later, a slow, crawling burn across my cheek and neck. I could smell my own skin. "Look what you've done, Elena," screamed Vanessa Cole, her voice shrill enough to echo through the room. Her mug was still clutched in her shaking hand, half a drop of espresso left inside. Her perfect red lips twisted into something unrecognizable. "You ruined everything." Everyone was watching, directors, interns, even the CEO, but no one moved. My presentation slides were still projected behind me. Slide 27 showed the numbers I'd just revealed. Absurdly high growth from the European division, the kind that didn't make mathematical sense. I hadn't accused anyone. I'd only shown the data. But Vanessa knew what it meant, and so did I. The silence stretched until Colton Reese, our CEO, finally stood up. 15-minute break. "Vanessa, my office, now." His voice cracked halfway through. I stayed frozen at the front of the room as people filed out, whispering, pretending not to look at me. Coffee dripped off my chin and onto the carpet. My skin was bright red, shaking. On the projection screen, my slides kept looping, the evidence that started all this. Then I saw it, the red blinking light on the wall camera. The whole meeting was being live-streamed to our London and Singapore branches. Every international office had just watched my manager throw scalding coffee in my face. In the bathroom, I finally broke. Tears burned worse than the coffee. My reflection was a mess-streaked mascara, blistered skin, my hair soaked. I dabbed my cheek with wet paper towels and tried to breathe. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from coworkers. "Are you okay? Don't talk to HR alone." Then one from Priya, our lead systems analyst. "Got the whole thing on video, don't sign anything." That text froze me. She knew something. I sank onto the floor, clutching my phone, replaying Vanessa's face in my head. The fury, the fear. I realized then this wasn't just anger. It was panic. She wasn't defending herself from embarrassment. She was defending a lie she'd built for months. And I just exposed it. As I rinsed my hands in the sink, trying to steady myself, a memory hit, something I'd seen on the shared drive 2 nights ago when I stayed late to finalize my report. Duplicate spreadsheets. 2 sets of data, one real, one adjusted. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone yet, not even Priya. My phone buzzed again. Message from HR, "Meeting in conference room B1 hour." Mandatory. I pressed a cold paper towel against my cheek and looked at myself one last time. The woman in the mirror didn't look like me anymore, not the quiet, polite analyst who'd spent 4 years building trust and credibility. No, that woman was gone. I picked up my USB drive, the one with the real data I'd been too scared to show before, and slipped it into my pocket. Because if Vanessa thought burning my skin would scare me into silence, she hadn't realized yet, she'd just made sure I'd never stop. Cliffhanger. As I walked out of the bathroom, I caught sight of Vanessa through the glass hallway wall, entering the server room with her badge. Alone, and the live stream light was still blinking red. Before the coffee, before the humiliation, before the burns, I actually admired Vanessa Cole. Everyone did. She was the kind of executive people described with words like visionary and fearless. The kind who made you feel lucky just to be in her orbit. I'd worked at Lyrametrics, a fast-growing market research firm in Chicago, for 4 years. I was the quiet one, the data analyst who brought baked cookies to Friday meetings and stayed late to double-check formulas. I loved what I did. Numbers made sense. People didn't. Vanessa joined a 1.5 years ago, headhunted from a rival firm. Her first day, she swept into the office in a white blazer and heels sharp enough to cut glass, shaking hands and remembering everyone's names like a politician. Within 6 months, she became my direct manager after a department restructuring. That's when things started changing. At first, it was small stuff. She'd polish my reports before sending them to the board. Tiny edits that didn't seem important. 4% growth turned into 7%. Minor rounding adjustments, she called them. But over time, those numbers started looking too perfect. Too clean. I remember the first time I said something. "Hey, Vanessa." I said after a director's meeting, catching her by the espresso machine. Some of the metrics on the European accounts don't match my raw data. Did I pull from the wrong dashboard? She smiled, that corporate kind of smile that never touches the eyes. Elena, you're amazing with data, but you have to remember, executives don't want math, they want momentum. Sometimes we present potential, not just performance. Potential, I repeated, but that's not. Elena. Her tone sharpened just enough to shut me up. We're storytellers, we inspire investors. That's what keeps people employed. That line stuck with me, we inspire investors, like numbers were just props in her story. Over the next few months, my name disappeared from presentations. My team's work was filtered through her, and every time it reached the higher-ups, it shimmered with impossible results. I'd crunch numbers that said we were stable, she'd present them like we were thriving. Then came the awards, the press releases, the corporate retreat where she was called the face of Lyra's global expansion. Meanwhile, I was still pulling 80-hour weeks, quietly watching our European division reports climb into fairy tale territory. One night, I stayed late to prep the quarterly analysis. The office was empty except for the hum of the AC and the flicker of my monitor. That's when I noticed a hidden shared folder on the drive, EU Growth Revision. Inside, I found two dashboards, one labeled Internal and one Investor. The internal one showed modest but realistic progress. The investor version looked like a miracle. Double-digit growth, fake projections, fabricated client retention rates, and every document was signed by Vanessa Cole. I remember sitting there for a full minute, unable to move, just staring at the screen. Then I did something stupid, or maybe brave. I emailed the files to myself. 3 days later, she called me into her office. "Elena," she said, smiling tightly, "about your presentation this quarter, I need you to stick to the approved slides." I slid the report I'd been working on across her desk. "Vanessa, the numbers don't make sense. They're not aligned with market data or customer acquisition costs." Her eyes hardened. "Your job is analysis, not judgment. The board has already approved the budget based on these numbers. Challenging them now could jeopardize everything, including your position." I left her office shaking. That night, I backed up every original file to a small USB drive and kept it hidden in my purse. I didn't plan to expose her. Not yet. I just wanted to protect myself, in case the truth ever came crashing down. But what I didn't realize then was that the crash was already coming, and it wouldn't be quiet. Cliffhanger. The week before the coffee incident, I got an anonymous text that said, "She's done this before. Check Velstra Analytics 2018. When I searched that company name the next morning, my stomach dropped. Vanessa Cole had been fired from Velstra Analytics for data irregularities. Only no one at Lyra ever knew. After that text, everything about Vanessa started to make sense. The polished confidence, the rehearsed empathy, the way she always redirected questions instead of answering them. She wasn't just a liar, she was practiced. I spent 2 straight nights digging. Velstra Analytics 2018. No major news reports, but there were clues, an SEC inquiry, then a quiet corporate settlement, and a single anonymous whistleblower thread on a finance forum. The initials matched hers. VC. When I tried pulling her old employment records through internal HR access, they were redacted, entire sections blocked. That's when I knew she'd scrubbed her past clean before coming here. From that point on, I stopped doubting what I saw. I started documenting everything. I kept duplicate backups of every file, screenshots of version histories, meeting notes, even audio memos after conversations where she reinterpreted the data. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but some part of me knew I'd need proof. Then, a strange thing happened. People started avoiding me. Lunch invitations stopped. Coworkers stopped asking for my help. It was subtle but deliberate. I'd been labeled. One Friday, I walked into the break room to find 2 analysts, Ryan and Daria, mid-conversation. They fell silent when they saw me. Ryan muttered, "She's the one who questioned Vanessa's numbers." Daria gave him a sharp look but didn't deny it. That night, I went home shaking, not from fear but from anger. The realization hit me. Vanessa wasn't just protecting her fraud. She was building a narrative against me. If anything went wrong, I'd be the scapegoat. By the next quarter, the lies had spread beyond Europe. Latin America's numbers suddenly looked promising. Southeast Asia's reports were accelerating. The company's stock climbed 11% in 3 months. Investors were ecstatic. Vanessa strutted through the office like a savior. And I was drowning in silence. Then came the dinner. It was a Thursday, late spring. Corporate dinner with key department heads and a few senior executives. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Colton, the CEO, personally invited me after I sent a revised data analysis for shareholder prep. I thought maybe he'd finally noticed something. Halfway through the meal, Colton raised his glass. To Vanessa, our catalyst for global growth. Everyone clapped. I forced a smile. Then he turned to me. And to Alina, the brains behind the math that proves it. Vanessa's hand tightened around her wine glass. Her nails made faint clicking sounds against the stem. "Oh, Alina's wonderful," she said, her voice sugary sweet. "She's very thorough." The table laughed politely. That night, I came home to find an unmarked envelope slid under my apartment door. Inside were 2 printed screenshots, emails I'd sent to a colleague months ago about Vanessa's inconsistencies. Someone had dug through my correspondence. A sticky note was attached. "You're not as invisible as you think." No signature. I didn't sleep that night. I backed up my files to an external cloud drive under a fake name. Every instinct told me things were turning dangerous. And I was right. 2 days later, my access to several shared folders was revoked due to restructuring. When I asked it about it, they told me the request came from Vanessa directly, with executive-level authorization. Then Priya from the IT department pulled me aside in the hallway. "She's deleting old reports," she whispered. "Ones you created. I saw the access logs." That's when I made the choice that changed everything. For the next all-hands meeting, the quarterly presentation, I'd finally show the real data. Side by side, the truth against the lie. No accusations, no dramatics, just numbers that spoke for themselves. It was the only language Vanessa couldn't manipulate. The night before the meeting, I sat in my apartment, staring at the USB drive that held everything. I could feel it pulsing in my hand like a heartbeat. If I did this, there would be no turning back. But if I didn't, she'd win again. Cliffhanger. The next morning, as I entered the office early to prep the slides, I found something new on my desk, an elegant white mug with a note in perfect handwriting. "For tomorrow's presentation, let's make it memorable." That mug sat on my desk all morning, white porcelain, gold lettering that read for the bold. I didn't touch it. By 9 a.m., the conference room was packed. The quarterly all-hands at Lyra Metrics was a full production, investor live streams, glossy presentations, applause breaks. It wasn't just a meeting. It was theater. And Vanessa Cole was the star. She kicked it off with a dazzling smile and a few rehearsed jokes. Charts glowed behind her like stained glass. When she said unprecedented growth, people actually clapped. Then she called my name. Now, our senior data analyst, Alina Porter, will walk us through the detailed metrics. She's been instrumental in validating our European success story. Success story, not performance report. Success story. My hands were shaking, but I plugged in my USB drive, opened the slides I'd built overnight, the real ones. The moment the first graph hit the screen, the energy in the room changed. My version had 2 columns. One labeled reported metrics, the other labeled actual performance. And the gaps were massive. Vanessa's expression didn't flicker, not at first, but the murmurs started fast. People leaned forward. Someone whispered, "That can't be right." I kept my voice steady. "These discrepancies appear across multiple quarters and align with no known market behavior. They suggest..." That's when it happened. The crash of ceramic against metal. A flash of heat. Pain. Her coffee hit my face before the words could finish. Boiling espresso soaked my blouse, burned my cheek. The smell of bitterness and skin filled the room. "You ruined everything," she screamed. The silence afterward was the kind that leaves a ringing in your ears. I stood there dripping, trembling, coffee streaming off me. Every person in that room saw it, and no one moved. Not one. Colton finally stood. His voice was thin. "Everyone take 15. Vanessa, my office." She dropped the empty mug on the floor and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots. When the door closed, I saw something no one else did, the red light blinking on the camera at the far end of the room. The live stream hadn't been paused. Every one of our international offices had just watched what she did. I stumbled into the bathroom. My skin throbbed. I could barely look at myself in the mirror. My phone buzzed nonstop, coworkers, texts, messages, but one stood out from Priya. Got everything. Video, server logs, timestamps. Do not go to HR alone. Then another message from HR themselves. Meeting, conference room B1 hour. I sat on the counter, staring at that message. I already knew what it was: damage control. They'd twist it into a misunderstanding. They'd pay me to stay silent. Vanessa would survive, but I had leverage now, real leverage. And something in me had finally snapped. When I left the bathroom, my cheek wrapped in gauze from the first aid kit, I noticed something strange through the glass wall. Vanessa walking into the server room. Alone, why would she go there? Priya's message replayed in my head. Server logs. Timestamps, that was the moment I understood. She wasn't panicking. She was erasing me. Cliffhanger, 15 minutes later, as I was about to leave for HR, I got another text, this one from an unknown number. If you walk into that meeting without deleting what you have, you won't walk out. I froze in the hallway, staring at that text. If you walk into that meeting without deleting what you have, you won't walk out. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. Someone knew what I had, and they weren't bluffing. I ducked into the stairwell, out of sight, and called Priya. She answered on the first ring, whispering like she already knew. Elena, listen. She's in the server room right now. She just used her override credentials to delete your work account. She's erasing my data. Trying to, Priya said. But the backup syncs every hour to Singapore. She triggered a security alert. The international servers have everything, and they caught her on video explaining what she was deleting. Explaining? Priya's voice dropped. She was talking to someone on the phone the whole time, telling them what she was destroying and why. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal door. Who was she talking to? No idea yet, but the call was international. Everything inside me went cold. She's not working alone. Exactly. Don't go into that HR meeting without backup, Priya said. We're pulling system logs right now. I'll send proof as soon as it's verified. I hung up and slid down the wall, shaking. I could smell the burnt coffee still clinging to my skin. Vanessa wasn't just corrupt. She was dangerous, connected, protected. But I wasn't the same person I'd been that morning. I'd already been burned once. Literally. I wasn't going to let her finish what she started. I texted Ellis from finance, the only other person who'd ever questioned Vanessa's numbers. We need to talk. Urgent. He replied immediately. I've seen the same inconsistencies. Meet me after HR. I'll bring documentation. By the time I reached the HR floor, my hands had stopped shaking. My anger had settled into something colder: purpose. Inside conference room B, I found exactly what I expected. Vanessa sitting perfectly composed beside Janice, our HR director, and 3 department heads who owed their promotions to her. A non-disclosure agreement lay on the table. Elena, Janice began softly, we'd like to resolve this situation quickly and professionally. Vanessa folded her hands, every trace of fury replaced with fake remorse. I overreacted. The pressure of the moment got to me. I sincerely apologize for my emotional response. Your emotional response was throwing boiling coffee in my face, I said flatly. She ignored that. But Elena also presented unauthorized data that contradicted our approved projections, causing confusion across our global teams. Janice nodded sympathetically. We think it's best to treat this as a misunderstanding. The company will offer a 2-month severance package and a neutral reference letter in exchange for signing this NDA. They wanted me gone. Quietly, erased. I didn't sit. I didn't touch the pen. I just said, I'll need time to review this with my attorney. Vanessa's smile didn't crack, but her eyes did a flicker of panic. Before anyone could respond, the conference room door opened. Colton walked in, followed by Priya and a woman from legal I didn't recognize. Their faces were grim. This meeting's over, Colton said. His voice was shaking with contained fury. Janice blinked. Excuse me, Colton turned to Vanessa. The board has called an emergency session. You're required upstairs immediately. Vanessa kept her composure. What's this about? The woman from legal spoke. Evidence of data tampering, security breaches, and possible fraud. Singapore's servers transmitted a video showing you deleting reports while describing how you manipulated market numbers. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Pack your things, Colton said. Security will escort you. She opened her mouth to argue, but Priya added quietly, You might also want to explain who Carson Hayes is. The one you were on the phone with in that server room. That name hit her like a slap. Her mask cracked. I didn't know who Carson Hayes was then, but later I'd wish I hadn't found out. Cliffhanger. That night, after the board suspended Vanessa, I came home to find my apartment door slightly open, and my laptop still warm. On the screen was a single new message. You think she's gone? You have no idea who you're dealing with. The door to my apartment was barely cracked, but I knew before I stepped inside, someone had been there. No broken lock, no mess, just things slightly off. A photo frame tilted. A chair moved half an inch. My laptop still humming when I hadn't used it since morning. I stood in the doorway with my phone in my hand, recording video just in case. Every instinct told me to leave, but exhaustion and adrenaline made me bold. I checked each room. Nothing missing, nothing obvious. Just that message on my screen. You think she's gone. You have no idea who you're dealing with. No sender, no trace. I called Priya immediately. She picked up, breathless. Alina, thank God. Are you okay? Someone's been in my apartment, I said. There's a message on my computer. There was silence on the line before she said, we need to talk in person, not on the phone, they could be listening. That was when I realized this wasn't over. Vanessa had allies, real ones. By morning, the story had leaked. News outlets were already running headlines. Lyra Metrics executives suspended over fraud allegations. The company's stock had plummeted 19% before the market even opened. My name wasn't mentioned yet, but that didn't last. Someone, probably one of Vanessa's directors, had leaked my personnel file. Articles started framing me as the disgruntled employee who'd been passed over for promotion twice. The narrative shifted fast. By 10 a.m., my inbox was full of anonymous threats. Then I got a text from Ellis in finance. We need to meet. I've found something bigger. We met in the parking garage under the building, where security cameras couldn't pick up audio. He looked pale, sweating. This isn't just internal fraud, he said quietly. Vanessa's numbers, they were designed to attract specific investors, one in particular, Velocent Analytics. The name hit me like a punch. That's her old competitor, Ellis nodded. She was coordinating with someone there. I found payments, small consulting fees, to a shell company registered under the name Hayes Consulting. Carson Hayes. The same guy from the server call. She was selling falsified growth to a competitor, I said slowly, my stomach twisting. Not just selling it, he said. She was using it to funnel investment from them. They'd pump money into Lyra, she'd fake performance, our stock would inflate, and when it peaked, she'd bail with a buyout clause. It's corporate sabotage, Alina, a takeover scam. I just stared at him. My mind was racing. Vanessa hadn't been building Lyra, she'd been gutting it from the inside. Then Ellis lowered his voice. And there's more. The Singapore footage shows she wasn't alone in the server room. She was video calling someone, a man in a suit. Facial recognition flagged him as Ethan Cole. The name took a second to land. Then it hit. Her husband. Vanessa Cole's husband was an executive at Velocent Analytics. The Carson Hayes she mentioned wasn't an accomplice. He was the cover. The real partner was the man sleeping beside her. The fraud, the investments, the transfers, it all made sense. They'd created a perfect loop. She inflated performance, he arranged strategic buy-ins from Velocent, and together they planned to destroy Lyra from within. And I had all the proof sitting on a USB drive in my bag. That night, while the board scrambled and the lawyers panicked, I got another message. No text, just a photo attachment. It was me, taken from across the street. Standing in my apartment window, the caption read, "Delete everything or you'll be next." I felt something break inside me, not fear, not shock, just finality. If they wanted to scare me, they miscalculated. I'd already lost too much. I picked up my phone and called Priya. It's time, I said. We're not just defending ourselves anymore, we're burning them down. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Priya met me outside Lyra's headquarters with a flash drive and a single sentence that changed everything. The board wants you to present your findings directly to investors, but Vanessa's already inside the building. When Priya told me Vanessa was inside the building, I didn't believe her at first. She'd been escorted out by security 2 days ago, her access credentials revoked, her career publicly detonated. But as we rode the elevator up to the executive floor, Priya showed me her tablet. Security logs from that morning. Unauthorized badge access. Credential ID, J. Malik, an assistant who reported directly to Vanessa. The same ID used on the executive floor 30 minutes earlier. She borrowed someone else's credentials, Priya said quietly. And we think she's not alone. The elevator doors opened to chaos. Board members huddled in the glass conference room, investors dialing in, legal counsel rushing between offices. The air was thick with tension. Colton saw me and waved me over. His voice was low but urgent. "We need you to present the verified numbers now. The investors are ready." I was about to follow him when Priya grabbed my wrist. "Wait," she whispered, pulling up a file on her tablet. "There's something you need to see first." It was an email chain. Thousands of messages pulled from Vanessa's deleted server archives. Each one between her and Ethan Cole, her husband, the Velocent analytics executive. The first emails looked like standard networking, career updates, consulting chatter. But then the tone changed. I can shift the internal data to show 14% quarterly growth. It'll trigger investor confidence for expansion funding. Do it. Once the funding clears, we'll pull out. Lyra collapses, Velocent buys the remnants for pennies. It wasn't just fraud. It was a corporate hit job. They'd spent 18 months manipulating Lyra's growth metrics to inflate its valuation, then planned to implode it deliberately. Destroy investor confidence, crash the stock, and let Velocent acquire it at a fraction of its worth. But then I scrolled further. The final emails weren't about money. They were about me. She's getting suspicious. The analyst, you said she's just a number nerd. Handle it. She won't stay quiet. She reminds me of Charlotte. Charlotte? I asked. Priya hesitated, then opened another document, an internal memo she'd found buried in Vanessa's HR files. Charlotte Hensley, Junior Data Specialist, Velstra Analytics 2018. Status, deceased. Cause, self-inflicted. She was the whistleblower, Priya said softly. Vanessa's assistant at her old firm, the one who reported the irregularities. 2 weeks later, she was dead. My stomach turned. You think Vanessa had something to do with it? Priya didn't answer. She didn't have to. I scrolled to the next email in the chain. I told you, Ethan. They never learn. People like her think honesty protects them. It doesn't. It isolates them. You just make sure the narrative fits and I'll handle the rest. It wasn't rage driving Vanessa. It wasn't even greed anymore. It was control. She wanted to break the people who threatened her illusion, to prove she could manipulate not just numbers, but reality itself. Every fraud, every falsified report, every carefully calculated charm wasn't to build success. It was to test how far she could bend truth before it broke someone else. And I had been her next experiment. A notification pinged on Priya's tablet, security update. Vanessa's stolen credentials had just been used to access storage room 3E. She's in the West Wing, Priya said. They're locking it down. Colton turned to me. Elena, stay here, we'll handle this. But I already knew what I was going to do, because if Vanessa wanted control, if she thrived on intimidation, then the only way to beat her was to confront her. Cliffhanger. As I slipped away from the boardroom and down the hallway toward storage room 3E, my phone buzzed with a new message. Come alone if you want to protect what's left of your reputation. And when I pushed the door open, she was waiting for me, calm, smiling, with her laptop open and a single finger hovering over the send button. She looked completely composed. Perfect white blouse, hair sleek, eyes clear, like she hadn't just burned her career to ash. Close the door, Elena, Vanessa said, her tone almost polite. I didn't. I stood just inside the doorway, letting the fluorescent light from the hallway spill in. You don't have access here anymore. Security's on their way. She smiled faintly. Then we'd better make this quick. On the table beside her laptop sat a thick folder. You've made yourself very important lately. The board loves a martyr, but I thought you should see what happens when you push too far. She slid the folder toward me. Inside were printed screenshots of my old Slack messages and emails to a friend who'd left for another firm years ago. Industry gossip, strategy talk, nothing confidential. But arranged carefully, selectively, they looked incriminating. Corporate espionage, she said smoothly. You fed information to a competitor. I already drafted a statement for the press and the board. They'll eat it up. You're bluffing, I said. Am I? She gestured to her open laptop. On the screen, a draft email addressed to all clients sat ready to send. Attached were files labeled confidential strategy reports. "If I go down," she said, "I'll take Lyra with me. And you'll be remembered as the analyst who destroyed an empire." "You'd ruin hundreds of jobs just to win," I said quietly. Her eyes hardened. "Winning is survival, everything else is decoration." It hit me then. This wasn't about money anymore. It never had been. Vanessa fed on power, the thrill of manipulation, the art of control. She wasn't trying to protect herself. She wanted to prove she was untouchable. I stepped closer, trying to buy time. "You know the board's already seen the emails between you and your husband, right? They know about the Velocint scheme." Her expression flickered for half a second. "They'll believe what I tell them to believe." "No," I said. "Not this time." Because in that moment, the wall screen behind her flickered to life. The company logo vanished, replaced by a live feed from the boardroom. Colton, Priya, and half the executive team appeared on camera, watching everything. Vanessa froze. Priya's voice came through a hidden speaker in the ceiling. "We've been recording this entire conversation, Vanessa. Every word, every threat." For the first time, Vanessa's composure cracked. "You think this will save you?" she hissed, lunging for the laptop. But before she could touch the keyboard, the door burst open. Security rushed in, followed by Colton himself. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. "It's over," he said simply. As they led her away, Vanessa turned her head and met my eyes one last time. There was no fear there, just hatred, sharp and alive. "You think you've won," she said, "but you've only inherited the wreckage." And then she was gone. The aftermath was chaos, audits, press releases, emergency board meetings. But the truth finally surfaced. Vanessa and her husband had orchestrated a corporate sabotage plan worth nearly $50 million in fraudulent assets. She eventually pleaded guilty to securities fraud and industrial espionage. Lyra's stock collapsed for a while, but not forever. Transparency rebuilt what deception had destroyed. Investors who'd fled came back. The board, desperate to prove accountability, offered me a new role, Director of European Operations, to rebuild what she'd faked. The first time I spoke to our international teams, I told them the truth. "Our numbers aren't impressive," I said, "but at least they're real." That honesty earned more respect than any glossy lie ever could. 3 months later, I received a small box on my desk. Inside was a ceramic travel mug, white with gold lettering. The note read, "For the woman who turned the fire into light. The Lyra team." I still keep it on my shelf, burn marks and all. Vanessa thought revenge was destruction. She never understood that real revenge is endurance. I didn't just survive her fire, I built something out of its ashes. Now every time I teach a new analyst how to question data, I tell them the same thing: truth doesn't scream. It endures. And that's how you win.